Hey you guys, I hope you're all well. So as you can all imagine, I am always looking for ideas for video content. I have a number of topics which I care very much about. Free speech, political correctness, and feminism are three of my big ones. However, a topic that I've actually been paying quite a lot of attention to over the last little while is the issues that face men throughout society and the tendency of feminism and the mainstream media to either ridicule or ignore them. So it came as quite good timing when a couple of weeks ago, one of my patrons, David, suggested that I make a video about male victims of sexual assault and the lack of support that they receive. Sexual assault is generally painted as a female issue, which it largely is. Women are the primary victims of sexual violence around the world. However, more men are sexually assaulted than you would think. And if you think that women are unlikely to come forward when they've been sexually assaulted for obvious reasons, well, men are even less likely to come forward. What women are most worried about when coming forward about being sexually assaulted is being slut-shamed and being blamed for the abuse, which is historically what happened to women when they came forward about rape. However, nowadays they face a torrent of support from the mainstream media and the mainstream cultural arena, with people telling them it's not their fault, they weren't to blame, and that they deserve sympathy and help and respect. Male survivors of sexual assault, on the other hand, are stigmatized as not being manly or macho enough, as they allegedly should have been able to defend themselves. Men and boys are expected to be self-reliant and independent and invulnerable. So, if they are sexually abused, their stereotyped role as a male and also their identity as the protector rather than the dependent is damaged or usurped, so to speak. According to Gary Foster, who is the founder and manager of Living Well, an organization that offers support to male survivors of sexual abuse, for males, the idea is that you're supposed to be strong, stoic, self-reliant, able to take care of yourself. Nobody's meant to be able to put the one over on you. So being raped can change your whole sense of identity as a man. Even worse, in cases where they are molested or sexually assaulted by a woman, which does happen, they're told that they should feel lucky and that they should have enjoyed it and that they should be grateful that they've been initiated into the sexual universe. This is often cited as the hot for teacher or babysitter complex and makes it extremely difficult for adolescent boys to even realize that they are being abused. Male sexual assault is also something that is considered acceptable to joke about. I mean, prison rape jokes are fairly commonplace in modern comedy.
They're sending you to San Quentin? Oh.
What?
Oh, God. Are they in San Quentin?
Oh,
Everybody gets the dick.
I don't want it.
You're not gonna get it. You'll be there for 3 months.
I'm gonna be there for 10 years.
God damn. 10 years? Oh.
Why do you say it like that?
Oh.
It's not as bad as I've heard, is it?
Have you heard everybody it is? That's how bad it is.
I didn't hear that part.
You might as well call that San man.
So if you think women feel a great sense of shame at being sexually abused, men feel the exact same thing. However, they are much, much less likely to receive widespread sympathy and support than women are. Research strongly suggests, and sources are in the video description for those who are interested, that at least 1 in 6 men have experienced sexual abuse or assault, whether as children or in adulthood. That is not a small minority, especially when you consider men are less likely even than women to report it, and the comparatively small amount of support services dedicated to men. And as if to add insult to injury, the sexual assault of men and boys wasn't even legally recognized until fairly recently. In the UK, for example, male victim rape wasn't recognised under law until 1994 with the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act. In Queensland, where I live, rape was considered something that was exclusively done to a woman until 1997. And in the USA, the FBI defined forcible rape for data collecting purposes as the carnal knowledge of a female forcibly and against her will. No mention of male victims anywhere right up until 2012. When it comes to the issue of men being less likely to report than women, we saw evidence of this in Australia, where the government launched a royal commission into childhood sexual assault. On average, men tend to disclose childhood sexual abuse about 10 years later than women will. In addition, of the 6,875 people to testify at the Royal Commission, almost 2/3 were male. Now, if nearly 2/3 of those victims had been female, it would have been all over the mainstream media and social media. Celebrities would be writing songs about it, and the Me Too sisterhood would be brandishing that statistic over their heads. But since those victims were, male, in addition to the sexual assault of men and boys by men, there is the somewhat contentious issue of female perpetrators of sexual assault against males. This involves what you would call being forced to penetrate. Now, at face value, this would seem impossible. After all, surely, if a man is even able to penetrate, so to speak, this indicates that he is enjoying and consenting, right? Wrong. This stigma is an incredibly dangerous one and contributes to the guilt, shame, and confusion that many young men especially feel as a result of this kind of abuse. Physical signs that a man is aroused are not automatically indicative of consent or enjoyment. They are just that, physical, instinctual, and often superficial. And in the case of the hot-for-teacher or babysitter complex, it is still an abuse of power. It is still the exploitation of a less powerful individual by someone who is fully aware of the trust that has been placed in them and is knowingly taking advantage of it. It causes much lasting damage, and yet still it is often joked about in popular culture.
Are you lost?
Stifler's mom. No, not lost. Just, taking the tour.
I got some scotch.
Single malt.
Aged 18 years. The way I like it.
Can you imagine for 1 second what the reaction would be to that clip if the genders were reversed? Now, I know what you must be thinking. Surely this kind of thing doesn't happen very often, right? Well, here's some food for thought. In 2010, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention invented a category of sexual violence to be included in their National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey. This category was called Being Made to Penetrate, and defines victims as those who have been forced to penetrate someone else with their body parts, whether through physical force or coercion, or when they were drunk or high or otherwise unable to consent. When these cases were accounted for, the number of incidents of sexual violence amongst men and women leveled out to pretty much the same, with 1.27 million women being victims of sexual violence and 1.267 million men being victims of the same crime. And yet, for some reason, the narrative surrounding this issue didn't change. There was no heightened awareness of violence against men or male victims of sexual assault, and anyone who tried to raise this issue was demonized as either a rape apologist or a misogynist. Another thing to factor into the issue of male victims of sexual assault is prison rape. The sexual assault of inmates throughout the US is sadly prolific. According to a number of surveys conducted by the Bureau of Justice Statistics between 2011 and 2012, Alan J. Beck, a senior statistician at the BJS, confirmed to the New York Review of Books that nearly 200,000 people total were sexually violated in American detention facilities in 2011. Considering, and again according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, that of the overall US prison and jail population, about 90.6% of it is male, what we can logically conclude from this is that more men than women are actually raped in the US every year. However, these numbers are not included in the national statistics. And while prisons and jails are instructed to adopt a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to sexual assault, it is still routine, and is even used as a currency by some guards to keep the more violent inmates in check. In other words, they turn a blind eye to their activities in exchange for good behavior. And sure, when considering the issue of prison rape, there is the temptation to think, well, prison is a punishment after all. But come on, you don't go to jail to become the victim of another crime. And remember, not everybody is in jail for violent offenses. There are plenty of non-violent, white-collar criminals who got pipped for things like fraud or tax evasion. Still bad things to do and worthy of punishment, of course, but hardly up there with serial killers. Since they are non-violent, they are the ones who tend to become fodder for the more violent end of the inmates. It is still a matter of power and the exploitation of the vulnerable for some sadistic pleasure. When you lay out the issue of male sexual assault in this way, you can only assume it is shocking. However, it gets zero attention in the mainstream media and is often joked about in popular culture. So why is there this stoic lack of sympathy for men? That is a question that needs to be answered. Men can absolutely suffer at the hands of those who seek to overpower them. It is shameful that they are not afforded the same compassion that is rightfully lavished on women when they are victims of the same crime. If you liked that video, please remember to like, subscribe, share, leave me a comment, and if you really liked it, then check out the video description for other ways you can support me.